Hi, friends. Welcome back on board the Tommy Obenchain podcast. I'm Tommy Obenchain. I'm delighted to be here with you, and we've got a great episode in store this week. So I'm home. How neat is that? It's good to be home, and I would say that it always is. And with that, it's fun to have gotten to record whilst in the wild because I also really enjoy that too. And there's more to come there. I've got a lot of travel in the next month, so don't get too used to seeing me here in this well-lit room. But I digress. If you've been reading the blog this week, you know that I'm following Southwest's recent moves closely. That's been true over the last 6 months, unequivocally, and I just love Southwest Airlines, their brand. To be sure, that this week's earnings call confirmed a lot of what most of us were worried about. Functionally, the brand's relationship with its customers is breaking, or at least the question seems to kind of be disposed to an answer there, that there is breakage occurring. And to be sure, this isn't a teardown episode. It's more of a blueprint, if I can be so bold, that's come out of a lot of thought and some fun conversations in a symbol, but more on that another time. So what I want to talk about today really are the three moves that I believe Southwest could make right now to win back the people that they're in great danger of losing and to grow market share, actually take the brand leaping forward and hold course on becoming the most loved airline and most profitable airline in the world, which they have the best shot of being because they have been that before. So this isn't some far-flung, let's just kind of imagineer here as much as it's a question of, well, holding course, if I might be so bold. But first, before I do that, I got to tell a story because Gary Leff, he's at this phenomenal blog, viewfromthewing.com, and I just love and respect what he does and what he writes about. I mean, how can you not, to a degree, these full-time bloggers? He writes incredible stuff. So Gary left today. He wrote about some post he found somewhere on the internet of a some poster who took a picture of a Delta flight attendant boarding a Delta flight from New York's JFK to Atlanta, and allegedly this crew member was deadheading and had what the poster counted to be 5 pieces of luggage. And so Gary was just kind of doing a maybe like somewhat dramatic kind of post on, should this flight attendant have had so much bags and what's the rules here? And his point was that there is like FAA kind of governance, if you will, regulation, more accurately put, on how many bags a passenger can bring on board. Those same rules do not apply to crew members insofar as government oversight is concerned. However, there are airline-specific policies in place, and Gary cited Americans and Uniteds, I believe. Anyways, you can read the post. Good post. If not a little sensational, but fun to read. And the question was one that I was struck by because he made the point that there's obviously a very good passenger service reason to keep crew members on their way and not separate them from their luggage. And so they have a wider berth, so to say, than everyday passengers, if you can kind of draw that line to, well, carry more baggage on board and get it actually, in the carry-on space on the plane versus in the hold as check luggage. Okay, so that brings me to my story. So I worked for a flight attendant for a couple of years for United, and I'm not with United anymore, but I love United Airlines, to be sure, and worked on the legacy United side of the operation, not the Continental side, was a part of the merged carrier, worked alongside. A lot of folks on the Continental side have great affection for both, to be sure, although there's a lot one could say about that merger, and it was extremely fun and very insightful getting to work for the airline in kind of, the couple of years that followed that very hairy merger. Okay, so I'm on the United side and I'm working a flight. It was a trip, Newark to London to Heathrow and then back to Newark, 24-hour layover, and we're back. So 3-day trip, pretty standard transatlantic. I'm actually working the economy galley on the trip because I wasn't especially senior, but I wasn't senior at all, but the crew was like relatively junior. And so I was able to get the economy galley position in our briefing before we left New York. And I say that, I'll say fun crew, but kind of a hilarious trip. It was my first time working the economy galley on the 767. I didn't actually realize that the carts handled like the heating of the food, and so I set that up wrong. Sorry if you were on the flight over. We were a little delayed in getting meals out, which was hilarious. It was also, I think, like the late departure. That's my memory. So it was like a 10 p.m. departure out of Newark. So we didn't serve meals until too late into like it was everyone had to wait a minute to get their food, but everyone did. It was great. Everyone got to rest and then had a great breakfast service that followed. Anyways, fun layover in London. Great time to be there, and it was like February, so our loads were relatively light in both directions. But on the return, a crew member who I actually was in like flight attendant training with, I knew her and she's great. Um, I believe she had bought some stuff in London. Basically, she had decided to check a bag, and Gary's whole point in this blog post was like, you don't want flight attendants getting separated from their luggage. And ironically, this flight attendant decides on her own volition because she had a big bag and she wanted to bring stuff back from London. I don't know. She checks it. So like I remember we like the crew like gets off the van from the hotel and then stops so she can go and check her bag in at the ticket counter, which was not normal at United. Other airlines do that normatively on a long haul crew basis. Like you watch an Emirates crew walk into the airport and they've all got their like massive suitcase trolleys that they're pulling, through the concourse until they get to the check-in desk, kind of pre-immigration, pre-security, and then like they all drop their bags there, and that's like totally normal. But that is not the case at United or I think any U.S. carrier outside of like exception, not norm. So this is an exception scenario where we're stopping and she is dropping her bag to check in for our flight. And we're there, like we're not cutting it close. We get there, have a minute to like, walk around the terminal, the Queen's Terminal, Terminal 2 at Heathrow. It's a cool facility. And then get on our plane, do our brief, do our checks, board our passengers. We're off and headed back for North America. Awesome. Until the the captain dings the cabin, ding ding, and it's the cockpit calling, and he calls back to tell us that tell like the purser and then this flight attendant, my friend, that her bag had not been put on the plane. That it was like they missed it, so it's on the next flight to Newark. So it's going to get in like 2 hours later. And I remember that flight was a 757. That was a Continental crew and a Continental plane, and the whole thing was like, what? How did you miss? I mean, any bags? There's like no one on this airplane. And we really did have like we were probably in economy. We were to my memory at like somewhere between a 50 and 60% load factor. We maybe were a little bit fuller in business and first. My memory would implicate as much. The point is not just that we were not full. Like this was not a busy day. It was like a Wednesday in London. The whole thing's like, how in the world did we miss this crew member's baggie on the plane? And totally proves Gary's point, which is like you don't, if you're picking, want flight attendants to have to check their bags, nor pilots, obviously, even perhaps more so, but similarly. And I remember thinking like, God, I'm so glad I didn't check a bag, and I never did as a flight attendant. But I'm so glad I didn't, especially as a working crew member. But I was so glad I didn't because my commute flight back to Texas was like an hour after we landed, and I knew I was getting it close, and I could just stay the next day. But we were like last flight in. We were the second last flight in from London that night. There was one more that followed us. It was at Continental 77 that her bag made it in on. But like, if I had to wait for that flight to get in, I would have for sure not made my commute flight to where I lived back home to Texas, and would have spent an extra night away from home, which like is kind of the way it goes as a crew member. The point though is just that like Flight Attendant World is a very unique one, and I saw the picture because it's posted on its website, and it's just interesting. People, crew members just kind of can forget how optically visible they are and what they represent, because it's like, oh yeah, like this Delta flight attendant that the post is written about in the context of what Gary talked about, and like she's carrying 5 bags, and it's really like, well, no, she's got her like main carry on. She's got kind of the chaser that everyone like straps an extra bag onto on the crew member basis. That's a more of like a personal item. She has a purse, which is company issued on Delta's end. Props to them, and then a like to go bag of food, and maybe kind of one other like small item that's out on top. It was very like, oh yeah, you count that. I'm sure you can get to 5, but it's not like she's like trying to lug like 5 rollerboards on board. It felt a little misleading to me, and I would just gently suggest that Flight Attendant World is one that you have to kind of be in it to know it. Even pilots don't totally get it because they just fly less, is what's like empirically accurate from an hour standpoint, with like very limited exception. And that's usually because a flight attendant's flying less, not because a pilot's flying less. Anyways, so not because a pilot is flying more. Anyways, so I just would say that Flight Attendant World's kind of a, it's a unique one. And that instance where the only instance I have memory of where a cabin crew member I was working with had to check a bag as a working crew member, it got lost. So didn't speak well to the whole situation at large. But the trip itself was very fun. And I remember the purser, she was super sweet, but she was like, I don't like doing announcements. I was like, great, I'll do them. So I remember I did the announcements, I think in both directions. And it was a ton of fun if you're me, because I love doing announcements on the plane and miss it. And that's not the thing I probably miss the most, but I do miss it a lot. It was great fun. And I do, like, when I was a flight attendant, I had really what, like, you could have, if this guy was taking a picture of me, you would have counted as 3 bags. I had like my rollerboard bag. I had my chaser that was like, kind of my attach on. And that had, when I was a flight attendant, it was just before we rolled out the, digital version. I guess it was both. I like had to carry around a print version of the flight attendant operations manual, which was like this, thick, like bigger than the Bible kind of document that just outlined like anything and everything that kind of could go wrong. Maybe it could go wrong. Here's how we, handle it as crew. So that was neat. And then that did actually phase out while I was like, a crew member. But the point I'm making is just that you had this like company issued like massive binder you had to carry around all the time in the, kind of sunset years of my quick tenure as cabin crew with United. And where I'm going in that is like, that was like, almost like filled the bag. And then I had a small briefcase that I had traveled with for work before that I continued to use as kind of my personal item. It was not company issued. Was I breaking the rules? Hard to say. I don't think I was actually. It was pretty sure it was within regulation, but it was a function of like, I had been in like management consulting before that, kind of had gotten used to like, oh, this is how you travel, on short trips. And so it was actually simpler as a cabin crew member because it was like, oh, I just have to bring my uniform around. I don't have to like pack out, 4 different versions of a suit for a week-long trip away or what have you. It was a simpler packing job being a flight attendant. So I guess I technically had 3 pieces, and that was both like totally allowable, but just interesting because it was like, oh yeah, that's definitely more like the personal item plus one that passengers are subjected to. But it didn't look so offensive as, as perhaps this picture did. Maybe we're all just kind of a little too wrapped up in this, and maybe it's really born out of the fact that airlines are way too fast to tell passengers there's no room on the plane for carry-on bags when in fact there is. It's just, faster, easier, maybe kind of the lazy option to not mention it to a boarding group of passengers, especially on the gate agent side. We've got a lot of pressure to get an airplane off on time. I remember that more than once where we'd have passengers getting on the airplanes I was working on, and they're like, they made me check my bag and there's still space for the bag. I remember one guy in Minneapolis, he just rolled his bag down, especially on top of the jet bridge, and he just tore the check bag tag off, and he like looked on the plane, tore the check bag tag off, handed it to me, and was like, I'm putting my bag on this airplane. And there was bin space. And my memory is that I was technically like, we were not supposed to, once a bag had been tagged as checked, pull a check tag off of it. But I was like, I was the purser, and I was like, this guy, like, we've got room on the plane. This guy should not have had a bag, the bag tagged. And so I for sure should get it on the plane, and then just gave the actual ticket to the, not ticket, but the check tag to the gate agent. Was like, you need to off this bag because he's got it in the cabin. And that was good for him. And I'm glad I could help him. That's the way it should go. Because like, if you're carrying a bag on, you want to have it with you, not have to put it on the plane. And there's a whole kind of conversation we had on like check bags and carry-on bags and what's being incentivized. Because the issue, the gate agents who are sitting up at the top of the gate, they're trying to get a flight off on time because that's how they're scrutinized as a work group, as a station, right? So they have total incentive for like, hey, we don't want to hold a plane because we've got a bunch of bags that are stuck, in the forward galley because we can't have space for them. We got to run up to the top of the, top of the jet bridge to go print off bag tags for them and figure that out. Like, that just takes time, and it causes delays, and that does cost money, causes scrutiny. It doesn't kind of go well in like, corporate world. And so it's all kind of salient, right? But there and again, like free bags, question mark leads us well into our conversation today of Southwest Airlines, because Q2 was painted as probably a rosier picture than in fact it was. And that kind of breakage in customer confidence is one that's, easy to predict, but like, what does it mean right now, and what needs to happen, and what's gone wrong? Because there's a lot of commentary, right, about Southwest presently. Some of that commentary, totally reasonable, some of it totally debased. I probably got some of both out in the ether. Where I want to talk tonight is really first kind of, what's gone wrong, what quick fixes would allow an adjustment, of course, and then finally what really does need to change, because Southwest has got this massive opportunity that if they don't take advantage of it, whether they, make no changes or some changes, they're not gonna make it over the long haul. That's a pretty bold prediction. So I'm delighted to be wrong, number one, and then I, don't sit in their C-suite. I just, record a podcast in my bedroom, and then finally, and sometimes in Sky Clubs, and then finally, am a shareholder. Like, I believe in the airline enough to like own shares of the company itself and want to see it through, because I want them to completely, grow and crush it. And I'm flying a bunch of Southwest right now because they are a great deal from where I live in Dallas, which I think is actually like, it's both, it kind of cuts both ways. It's great for me. Okay. That's not really one of those cuts both ways. There's a value proposition Southwest really has that cannot be missed. And the fact that the fact that I find them to be such a good deal right now really speaks to probably some weakness, some softness in their product that needs to at least kind of be recognized, if not addressed more accurately. Okay, so that was a lot of preamble purely to say, what are we going to do to get Southwest back on course? That isn't just like a slam episode, kind of, like fire everyone sort of thing. And to be sure, I have real misgivings about this leadership team. And if I sat down with Bob Jordan right now, he seems like a very kind person, or at least like, an affable guy. And I think we'd really enjoy connecting. I would love to connect with him. And in the same token, like I would have some pretty direct questions for him that he may or may not answer. And I hope we could have that conversation at some point. But where I'm going in that is there's got to be a rationalization to the approach right now with a better appreciation of what the brand represents, not just for who Herb was, what the airline once was, or kind of what Elliott in New York hopes it can become. Because what's true is that like Elliott has no idea what they're doing. If you're just going to be so direct, and I can be that way, right? Because I've got nothing to lose in saying so. But they are, if you look at what they put out last fall, like they have no idea what they're talking about, which is just what a like hilarious reality. So that alone, like they're too far gone. And then the current board leads to a lot more questions than answers insofar as the board's kind of what leaders the board is really comprised of plainly. So you've got this whole question of leadership. I'm not going to answer that tonight. I can't answer it tonight. And I do think it needs an answer, but that's another topic. Okay. So what like tactically needs to happen? I can answer that with a little more kind of like, cogency, so to say. And then, like what's gone wrong? What needs to happen? What does that mean? And in some sense, like, what does it mean for you as a traveler? What does it mean for me as a traveler? What does it mean for shareholders? And what's possible at Southwest? And then what happens, if those possibilities are exercised versus not. Okay, so let's just start. Move number one. What are you going to do for Southwest? Kind of, we're taking this in three moves. First, we've got to reclaim the identity of the airline. The real issue at hand here is not assigned seats. It's not a basic economy fare class, even though the branding is quite poor around that basic product, and they admitted as much in the context of the most recent earnings call. It is the abdication, if I can be so bold, of kind of being the king of value with the bags fly free brand paradigm. I, again, as a shareholder, I'm like, come on, charge for bags. Let's juice the income statement, right? Like capitalist around the world rejoice. The point, though, is it completely misses like one of the tendencies of business and capitalism, which is that there's got to be value creation. That's at the heart of the matter. And acting like your product is now suddenly a commodity and everyone else does it, so we can do it too, really at least misses the point. And that's me being very kind of gingerly and kind in my language. So what needs to happen first? Bags fly free has got to be reinstated. Can it be reinstated part and parcel? Sure. Can you offer one instead of two and say, hey, we just really can't do two free anymore because we've got to make more money. Otherwise, we're not going to survive. Like that's reasonable. At least we're telling the truth now. The issue with this whole narrative has been that Southwest last fall sat and said, hey, we are not ever going to charge for checked bags because we did the homework. Our team has looked at it. It's going to cost $1.8 billion in revenue for us to start charging for checked bags, insofar as operational liability, operational risk, coupled then with the brand loss here. And then they completely turned course on it and said, oh no, passenger feedback says we're going to start checking for bags, which just completely destroys the trust the airline has spent the last half century building, which is not a joke, though we can laugh about it, but it's not a joke at all. It's a disaster, plainly. And it ignores like the fundamental tendencies of human behavioral psychology. And if humans are buying your airplane tickets, then you want to make sure you understand and are at least giving caution to credence towards those tendencies. So bags fly free, it's got to come back. It's got to maintain itself as a differentiator. Can it be branded, productized, spun uniquely? Absolutely. And that really steps into kind of part two of move number one, which is basic economy has got to go. No one likes basic economy fares, because you think of Spirit Airlines and no one likes Spirit Airlines. I mean, I don't know this, so I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure Ryanair, their cheapest tickets, I'm actually curious. I'm just going to go to their website real fast. I'm pretty sure Ryanair doesn't call their cheapest tickets basic economy. I'm going to keep going while I look up this because I'm just so intrigued. I mean, basic economy only has bad connotation to it. So why on earth you would name your product that is just like No one's thinking. What can you read? Okay, I'm just on Ryanair's site right now. Okay, I stand corrected. Ryanair does call it a basic fare. Good basic, regular plus, flexi plus. Okay, cool. I was wrong. I've been wrong before. I'm wrong again. The point, and this isn't gonna be cut. This is a one take episode or one take podcast. Good. I'm not gonna though go Ryanair's. It's kind of like like product to really champion insofar as like they're a good bellwether in the ultra low cost world, but Southwest is not an ultra low cost carrier. And if you want to act like one, you're kidding yourselves because you're not one. Your cost structures don't afford you to become one. And so as a result, Southwest, I would gently suggest, is not doing any favors to themselves, their brand, or their sales propositions by having a basic product. So Bags Fly Free has got to come back, and the basic name has got to go. And that's the other side of the coin. Their basic fares are not fundamentally basic fares. Basic fares are non-changeable, non-refundable. Southwest are changeable, and they're technically refundable in that you're able to issue a credit that's usable for 6 months. I mean, they're tons more valuable. I don't buy basic fares on American or Delta or United. American is the only one that I even consider it on, and even then I still don't buy them. And Southwest are better. They're not basic fares. And that's like props to the team beneath the leadership team who's actually built a product that has value towards it, but don't call it a basic product because to the point that they made on the Q2 call, the fare is turning people off. They're seeing a just meaningful drop in conversions because of the usage of the name basic, the connotation with basic, and then the product outline that they've kind of put forward on the website. And if you read between the lines, you start to work with it, as I have, you find it's actually like tons more valuable and worth buying. And I have like, again, like, I have like 12 flights in Southwest in the next couple of weeks. Like and they're all in basic fares, and they so much is there, but I could probably be stratified better in that, and actually would probably pay a little bit more. I'm glad I don't have to, but that's their loss, not mine, right? There's a broader gulf here that they're not closing. Okay, so basic has got to go. You can't call it basic, and then like choice plus and choice preferred, choice plus, however they kind of called the rest of it. Like it's bad. It's bad diction. The syllables aren't great insofar as like how it reads, even optically, and how it reads in your mind as you say to yourself, the whole rebranding of the Pure products is poor, and that's going to be point number 3 that I'll make in a minute, but I'll get there. Wait for it. Right now, we've got to restore trust. We've got to reclaim identity, and once we've let basic go, renamed that fare class alongside triumphantly bringing back Bags Fly Free and saying, hey, we're sorry and we were wrong. Everybody loves the guy who tells the truth and says they're wrong. No one lacks forgiveness here because we've all been there, but that's what's got to happen here. So I'm being bold. No questions asked. Am I right? In this instance, yes, I am, which is very bold of me to say, but here we are. It's my podcast. So the point, then number 2 is we've got to double down on loyalty because what's got to be re-engendered here. I mean, people have flocked to carriers that for the longest time have struggled to siphon customers from Southwest. People have flocked to American and to Delta with status matches like, oh, guess what? You're A-list, your gold medallion. Now get on this Delta plane. And dangerously, like, they're not coming back to Southwest. You get on a Delta flight and the product is just materially better. And being gold medallion is substantially better than being A-list on Southwest. With exceptions that I'm delighted to speak through, but the point I'm making is just that, like, that is a bad scenario when your tier level, like loyalist frequent flyers, are going and jumping over in droves to the other major carriers who can match you in network strength, who have a product that is outpacing your own and fundamentally has been the kind of the laggard player to this point in the industry story. Really lends itself to questions. So what do we need to do? We need to completely like revitalize Rapid Rewards. It's not broken. It's totally under leveraged right now. Tier benefits need to be reevaluated. I would gently submit like there's a lot of value that's being had in Southwest tier world, but the fact there's only 2 tiers plus companion pass is a real opportunity for stratification. My understanding is they're aware of this and working on that, and I hope they do a great job insofar as like, kind of what corporate here in Dallas is working on. But yeah, there's a meaningful opportunity, and like Southwest has been slow to innovate in the space of specifically loyalty, and it's been driven largely out of like the past versus the future. And so there's this real space to go, let's not just kind of say we're sorry and say we're back, but also then turn the tide and go, what are perks that we can introduce outside of tier status that really engage and recognize and bring our loyalists back to the table. And I'm talking like 10-year flyer bonuses, lifetime statuses. You look at like what JetBlue's done with like their Mosaic Plus program. Alaska does as well. Like we get it outside of the main architecture of the programs, kind of year-over-year requalification, to ask that question: how over a decade, over a lifetime, Can we make someone who's qualifying for A-list preferred Companion Pass, make them even more loyal? And in that place, Companion Pass is another golden goose. It's not at all far from a brand value standpoint from Bags Fly Free. That has got to be held fast, not kind of scuttled for quick money. So these things are good. And then really you can go now outside of the aviation industry to go, where is loyalty working? Look at a lot of quick service brands, that steps into a world that I spend a lot of time in right now, and see innovation that is completely worth its salt, and then also really working to engage customers and bring people back. Southwest can learn a lot from those spaces as well, and they would stand to gain from it even without kind of just the disaster of the last 6 months. Again, disaster being more from a brand standpoint. The rest of the changes, the corporate right sizing, assigned seating, international partnerships, that stuff's great. It's so additive. It's what the product needs. It's just the way that this has been kind of executed has been, just textbook poor, which is shocking, but legitimate. And so now what do you do? Because look, you can't go back in time, but you can't go forward. I don't think this is all without hope, which brings me to point number 3. Southwest has got to go where the money is. So the money in the airline industry right now is not in U.S. domestic low-cost flying. It is not. And you don't need to trust me on it. Just go and listen to American's earnings call, or Alaska's, or United's, or Delta's, or keep going. The point I'm making is, and you look at what Frontier's doing from a product standpoint, what Spirit is doing from a product standpoint. Southwest needs to move aggressively towards premium in a way that is not at all disconnected from what they're currently doing. They just need to lean in. Like, the opportunity is to lean in here and go, how can we actually build a product that is truly premium that people will pay for? And that's going to start with real simple stuff. Like, there needs to be a stated plan for the 737, 700, and 800 fleets that is better when it comes to onboard Wi-Fi and onboard power than just not mentioning it when talking about the evolved experience on Southwest, which is only coming to the 737 MAX. And even if it's like, hey, we just want those airplanes gone in 10 years, so if you fly on them, too bad. That's great. Just tell us. Just be forthright about it. The fact that the brand isn't speaking at all to the state of conversions or the state of the product experience on hundreds of airplanes in their fleet between the 700 and 800s is as you might say, a question mark. So, need a plan there. Let's get a plan as we're moving towards premium. Because what's true is that the plan for the Maxes, those planes look great. Like, really pretty good power. The fact that I don't have AC power is kind of beyond me, but that's more of a triviality. I'd say if I'm looking at the conversion plan on those airplanes, from a layout of passenger accommodation standpoint, from a LOPA standpoint, you should have plugs in every seat because everyone else does. So I'm going to notice when my Southwest flight doesn't have a plug for my laptop, but it just has one for my phone. And I'm going to remember when I last flew on, American, not even Delta or United. And they had a plug for my laptop too, and think, oh, that was kind of better. And that's going to inform how I buy the next time. Anyways, so we need a plan there. That's really not the full pivot to premium that I'm talking about as much as just like, we need to start there. And then we need to actually define a premium roadmap that involves rebranding these 4 very poorly named fare classes that they've kind of just come out with and said, hey, Want to Get Away Plus is gone, and instead we're calling it Choice, because Choice sounds like I'm ordering at McDonald's. And Southwest brand is not a food service brand, much less a fast food service brand, much less like McDonald's, which can get away with that. They need to have a product naming and product architecture that actually speaks to the way that consumers buy in their industry. And the case study for that really is in the US going to be Delta and what they've done with their Comfort Plus cabin. They have entirely crushed it with the Comfort Plus cabin. And who has followed suit? United and American. And United hilariously was the genesis of the kind of, like mid-premium economy cabin that you saw in Economy Plus in what I recall to be the late 90s. Then American did more room with that coach. That didn't go so well for reasons we can discuss on another podcast. That's a fun podcast that I'll look forward to doing soon, which is what happened to More Room throughout Coach, because that was fun while it lasted. But the point I'm making is that these 4 fare products have got to be renamed into something that actually speaks to premium, to value, and then to premium, right? Like value, then premium. And it needs to be kept really simple, like single syllables, simple, but like single syllables, easy to understand. And so I'll start there. Let's just start there. Okay, number 1. And then number 2, from that place of we've got a premium roadmap, we're going to rename the current domestic fare products. We need to lean heavily. And they're talking about this like loosely. So I hope it's in some level like on a roadmap, but I fear the current leadership team's ability to execute it with any competency whatsoever. There's got to be a true premium product that Southwest is putting out on long stage length flights that can compete with the likes of the premium product you see coming from other carriers in the States. And then that needs to be put over oceans as well, because they have the 737 MAX, which can competently and effectively cross oceans, and it is good at it now. And that airplane should absolutely be used on stage links of that size to expand the regional and international footprint of Southwest. So I'm talking like, this is what I want. I want a roadmap. I want a flatbed seat business class product that's executed just like the JetBlue Mint product, where it is it's a sub fleet, it's a subcategory of cruise, and it's a sub market of city pair flying that Southwest can take the footprint of those seats and replace what you're going to earn kind of on a 3 cross standard economy product with a true flatbed product that will just be revolutionary for the airline, for the brand, and then for the markets that they're serving in, and couple that with a premium lounge experience that makes, Atlanta and the new Delta One lounges kind of, shudder and fright because it's so good, because the Delta One lounge is the best current U.S. premium domestic lounge. And then Southwest has the opportunity to roll out kind of competitively a domestic lounge that is kind of akin to a, Sky Club, United Club, Admirals Club, Alaska Lounge, etc. That is just a quality, airport lounge. It's a great place to get coffee, that has a light kind of complimentary bar, and then a top shelf bar that's a revenue center. Basically, start to roll out 2 classes of lounges. You would be wise to start with one, kind of not drink the ocean, but stage that out again over this roadmap periods of years to go, this is what it's going to take to be competitive. And we've got to have a value product that walks into a premium everyday product that walks into a premium product that can actually make it in premium city pair domestic markets coupled with premium city pair international markets in a way that's competitive. And that is a transformation. Admittedly, it's a big shift from 737s, Texas Triangle, flights every 30 minutes, uber efficient, uber simple service. But the point is that ship has sailed. It's gone. So we can't go back to it. And in the same token, to be competitive at the scale Southwest is today, change has got to be bigger than we've got extra legroom and free drinks in that cabin, because Sun Country does that. Like that's not moving, it's not shaking, and it's not getting people off of Delta planes and onto Southwest planes. And that is what Southwest has got to do if they are really going to survive and they're in to thrive. And then they need to be on the lookout for a merger. Like JetBlue is kind of out of bed with American. They can't buy Spirit. That was largely Biden era politics. The point though is now United is kind of cozying up to JetBlue. Southwest should be buying JetBlue. JetBlue would give them access to markets they do not have the same level of, or same, kind of the same real estate in. That would give them an expanded fleet type. The game has changed now. They would be served well by that. It would give them the Mint product. They could use that very effectively. And if they can't get JetBlue, they should get Alaska, because that footprint would be very strong west, not near as strong east, but again, would move Southwest kind of up market in a way that would be valuable. That would both represent just massive headache and change, which is not something I can speak to with any level of plum, except to say that Southwest is eventually going to need more real estate, and it'll be a lot faster to buy it than to build it in-house to fly it. And in that place, it's a part of the roadmap that I wouldn't ignore, but it's got to be preceded by a lot of product elements that are either wrong, like the shift off backside free, kind of like they need to be repaired, that need to be actually, built upon, like the current fare packaging for the whole airline that is insufficient to meet the needs of 2025 air travel consumers. And then finally, just completely lacking. Like there's not premium lounges, there's not a business class product, and that can be remedied quickly if there is a business case that is met with an operational case for and behind it. And there is. It just takes the right leadership to see it into action, which I'm optimistic. Can that happen? Yes. It's not too late. That's just the baseline, plainly and substantially. And if Southwest can restore their brand ethos and the trust they've spent the last half century building, to then really put before their people, we are here to be the most loved and most profitable airline in the world, and this is the way forward. And it's a lot of the same with a little bit of magic, and the magic is us getting better, not us being, not us looking like everyone else. And in that place, utilizing the strength of Southwest people to do so, the airline's unstoppable. If that calibration is correctly met and led, it's not being executed as such right now. That's just the plain kind of hard and fast truth that is unfortunately at least recognizable in the Q2 earnings. And that's okay, because, well, that can change, which is good news. one last point. I think it's easy to be like, Tommy, you think Southwest should do flatbeds and business class? Like, you are out of your mind. And sure, call me out of my mind and anything else you like to call me. What I want to just highlight, though, that is substantial in the context of just airline history is those of you who were born before me will remember an airline called People Express, very successful. That just kind of just came apart at the seams due to rapid growth and mismanagement in in the latter part of the last century, and they, recognizing the shift to premium, quickly built out and then deployed a first class product, actually from Newark, to my earlier story, to London, and then expanded it across the Atlantic. And it was actually a very good first class product. Hilariously, that while they had to hastily pull it together, it was very competitive, very fast. We are not talking about the same structural issues being faced by the Southwest right now, nor am I suggesting that the same level of just uber rapid growth is the answer, because time and time again, it's been proven that is not true in the airline industry. What I am saying, though, is that if People Express can, in a matter of weeks, pull together a really good first class cabin, Southwest can do the same with the business class cabin. They've been really thoughtful towards on a roadmap that has a lot of kind of time and support around it. And if they don't, well, I'm concerned about the future of the airline, but I hope they will. And I want to fly it too. And the loyalty program is so much better. The brand so much stronger. Partnerships with valuable partnerships like Chase would only deepen. It would be very good for business. So here's to that. The bottom line is these are obviously not only airline only ideas, they're universal. The moment your product stops making your customer's life better, starts looking like everyone else's, you're in trouble, right? But that is fixable, because loyalty isn't about tricks. It's about trust. And so for whatever you're out there building, this is not a go build it sort of podcast. It's a let's talk travel adventures and let Tommy just kind of provide unfiltered commentary on the airline industry sort of podcast. There still is very much a clear road forward here, not just for Southwest, but for all of us, that we can look to and go, here's what's good, here's what's real, and here's what's ahead. So thanks for flying with me. This is the Tommy Obenchain podcast. I'm Tommy Obenchain. I'm thrilled to be with you here, and I can't wait for our next episode, wherever I might be recording it from, because it's great to fly with you. I'll catch you in the next one.